The last group of colonies that we're going to take a look at are the Middle Colonies. And the Middle Colonies we'll find is kind of a combination of Southern and Northern practices as we start going through them. Let's talk a little bit about the background and how each of these colonies were developed. New York, right, was originally a Dutch colony, which was founded as New Netherland in 1613, and it was established first as a fur trading post, right? Within New Netherlands, you had the town of New Amsterdam, which was the center of the fur trade for the Dutch. And Peter Stuyvesant was the one who was leading the colony in 1647. Now, when the British arrived in 1664, the English came in order to capture New Netherlands. The Dutch were not really prepared to fight with the British, so they pretty much surrendered the colony, and the English took it over and renamed it. So they renamed it New York, and New Amsterdam became known as New York City. The area was named after the Duke of York, who's the one who received the colony and became the proprietor of the colony and was then in charge of its ruling. Now, the Duke of York took part of the land of New York and actually gave some to Lord John Berkeley and Sir George Carteret. And they established the colony of New Jersey. And they wanted to attract settlers to come to this new colony, so they created a representative assembly and offered large amounts of land. And this really brought in a large number of people. They had a diverse population because the representative assembly was open to a lot of people coming in. So there was a diverse population of Dutch and Swedes who were there before, those from Finland, Scotland. So it was a large different groups of people living within the area of New Jersey. Fur trade was definitely an important part of the economy. Because New Jersey didn't really have any harbors, right, it was very difficult for it to make a huge profit. So eventually, the proprietors of the colony decided to sell their shares, and New Jersey became a royal colony instead. Pennsylvania was a little bit different. Pennsylvania was mostly made up of Quakers, right? And New Jersey had a huge Quaker population, which is a religious group that officially is known as the Society of Friends. And the Quakers believed in the equality of men and women. They believed in nonviolence. They also were for religious tolerance of all different types of Christian religions. And the Quakers had originally been banished from the New England colony, right, because of their ideas. If we think back to the New England colonies, if we think back to Massachusetts and kind of the way things were, they were very strict about their beliefs. So with the Quakers coming in and having very different beliefs than what was practiced by the Puritans in Massachusetts, especially with the idea of equality of men and women, nonviolence, and the tolerance of all religions, the Quakers didn't really find a place for themselves in New England, and they had to leave. And they went to New Jersey. But eventually, one of the Quakers, William Penn, was able to receive a charter from the King of England at that time, who was Charles II. And Charles II actually owed a debt to William Penn's family. So in exchange, Charles II gave Penn a plot of land here in the colonies, and that's how they established Pennsylvania. Penn decided to limit his own powers and instead established an elected assembly in the new colony. It was an example of a representative self-government here in the British colonies, and they also promised religious freedom to all different types of Christians, not just Quakers, but any type of Christian group that came to Pennsylvania would be able to practice freely. Penn also created the city of Philadelphia, right, which became the capital of Pennsylvania, which is known as the City of Brotherly Love. And just on a side note, right, when we think about Pennsylvania and Maryland, right, shared a border, and that's what we refer to as the Mason-Dixon line. And originally, it was a line that was actually an actual line of rocks that was set by two people, Mason and Dixon, to actually mark the border between Pennsylvania and Maryland. The Mason-Dixon line is important because as we go on and we get into the Civil War, right, the Mason-Dixon line serves to be that border between what's considered the North and what's considered the South. So that's just a little side note information there. Delaware is our last middle colony that we're going to discuss. And Penn got land from the Duke of York, which actually became part of Delaware. And Delaware originally was an area to the south and it was occupied by a huge Swedish population. And now that population was under Pennsylvania officially. However, Penn allowed them to govern themselves, so they pretty much remained very independent in comparison to the rest of Pennsylvania. And eventually in 1776, Delaware officially became a separate colony. So these are the Middle Colonies, right? And we see that they're a little bit different in their development in comparison to the South and to the North. So every region has their own um, individual development and their own identity that forms because of their history and because of the regions that they're in within the Americas.